let me begin our questioning with sort of a broad issue that each of you touched upon. And I'd like it if you could give me sort of your broad overview. Um, generally speaking, would a system with lower marginal rates and a much broader tax base be preferable to pass-through entities than what we have now with the code with its numerous rates and deductions? Generally speaking, would that sort of move be preferable? Let's start with Mr. Carroll and work our way down.
Yeah, generally, that approach, a lower rates, a broader base, follows in the tradition of the 1986 Tax Reform Act. Economists will tell you that the welfare loss or efficiency cost of the tax system is related to the square of the tax rate as opposed to just the tax rate. So high marginal rates are particularly harmful from an economic perspective. So that's, I think, an important consideration. Lower tax rates are usually beneficial from an economic perspective. In the area of flow-throughs, high tax rates, high individual tax rates have been found to adversely affect investment decisions, hiring decisions, and the growth of small businesses. So that's clearly a consideration. In evaluating a broad tax reform, I think one needs to really look at the effects of the broad reform on job creation and economic growth, and where low tax rates will, I think, be generally conducive to that goal.
Mr. Morawski, in general, a move toward lower marginal rates, a broader base, and in general getting rid of a lot of these deductions. Is that preferable?
Oh, I would say most definitely. You know, by basically sharing the wealth and spreading it over and reducing the rates, you're going to put more capital back into the market. You're going to have more investment. You're going to have much more activity, and you will see a definite growth. I don't know all the numbers like Ernst & Young off the top of my head, but they're anything you can do to reduce the rate and then spread the tax base around is going to be nothing but positive on our whole economy.
Mr. Smith.
I think it depends. A company that's highly capital intensive, such as our two companies, are going to have, if you take away the deductions that relate specifically to capital investment, machinery, that sort of thing, those are going to have a very negative effect on companies, or a bigger effect on a manufacturing company than they would on a restaurant or a service industry. So I think it needs careful consideration on both sides.
Mr. Kapp.
I agree with Mr. Smith. You have to be careful what you do. Obviously, I think overall it's a good thing, but those tax deductions and credits, there's a purpose for giving incentives to, especially in capital-intensive businesses like ours, to invest and reinvest in our company and create more jobs. So, you know, within reason, I think, as long as they're carefully considered, I think the answer to that's yeah.
Last quick question from me, and how about a brief answer from each of you. Tax reform is being bantied about up here, as we all know, and probably will continue to be. If you were in front of the super committee right now, and you could weigh in when it comes to this issue, tax reform, and specifically how it impacts pass-through entities, what's one word of caution or one word of advocacy? What would you advocate for if you had a moment or two in front of the super committee? Let's start with Mr. Kapp and then quickly work our way down.
I would say lower taxes and also certainty. There's a lot of things that we aren't doing because we're not sure what the tax code is going to be. I mean, just lower taxes and put some certainty in it so we know what we have to do and where we have to go.
Mr. Smith.
Well, as I stated in my testimony, I agree with Mr. Kapp here. The problem we have is uncertainty. We would like for years and years of consistency. We can compete with anybody in the world if we know where things are going to be. because of the state of flux that our tax code has been in for years, it creates a very big disincentives for companies like ours.
As I said in my testimony, also is the same thing, is the uncertainty, not being able to plan, not knowing what's going to happen. You're doing one thing one year, one thing the next year. Frankly, I'm a national sales tax. My personal opinion is, you know, it's fair and it's even, and it allows the capital to stay within the companies.
Mr. Carroll, conclude, what's one specific tax reform you might advocate for when it comes to these pass-through entities?
I think I would have some difficulty advocating a specific reform. I would think that one would want to take a very broad view, and you know, in addition to the certainty, also a stable tax system that won't change very, you know, that's going to provide some certainty over a period of time. One of the things that did happen in the '86 Act is the tax system changed fairly quickly several years after the '86 Act. It, in a sense, unraveled, and in some important respects, the tax base, even though the '86 Tax Reform Act lowered rates and broadened the base, the tax base was narrowed, and tax rates went back up. The other thing I would think that they should carefully consider is trying to avoid unintended consequences. There are a lot of interrelationships in the tax system as well as the economy, and trying to avoid unintended consequences, and I think that would be a very useful objective.